Hello, Jeremiah and Dr. Mosier. This is the recipe for the famous meatballs. We'll call it Mama Lincini's, although Mama Lincini was actually my great-grandma Lambitecchio, who came here from Italy. They changed their name to Lambi because they wanted to assimilate, and they only spoke Italian in the home. They spoke English outside of the home. This recipe was passed on by my great-grandmother to her mother, or to her daughter, my grandmother, and then to my mom. And then I added something I learned on YouTube, which is at the very end, and you'll see how we actually fry the meatballs or cook the meatballs. So stay tuned, I'll be back with you. I'm gonna make several of these little short videos, and then I'm gonna splice them together at the end. Hopefully you won't have to see me again or listen to much. The entire recipe should take about 15 minutes, okay? Thanks guys, enjoyed meeting both of you on Zoom. Bye. Okay guys, so the first step is to crack 6 eggs in a mixing bowl and then scramble them up like that. This step is actually easy, but it's very important because it has to wait for about an hour before you do anything else. So you scramble the eggs, pour in some milk like that. And then it's very important to use Italian flavored, Italian style panko breadcrumbs. So we no longer need this scrambler. So that'll go in the sink. And then you put in enough of these breadcrumbs to make it nice and thick. So we'll just dump the whole thing out. And now what happens is these breadcrumbs will soak up the milk and the eggs, and you got to let them sit for about an hour. Okay, and in an hour, there will be hardly any liquid left, and it'll be like a solid cluster of breadcrumbs. All right, coming back at you in an hour, which will seem like 1 second to you. Okay, welcome back. It's been about an hour. You can see how the breadcrumbs have soaked up all the egg and the milk, and so I'm gonna just put a little bit more milk in it just to make it a little more loose. I don't have any measurements, so you just kind of have to judge based on, you know, what you're seeing. So you can see the consistency of it, and now I'm going to start adding all the spices. We're going to start with some cheese. Again, no measurements. I just kind of throw some in. This is Romano cheese. Next up is some Parmesan. Just kind of throw it in there. Then the spices. I'm going to start with some parsley. A little bit of parsley. Then some minced garlic. You can use fresh if you want, but no one's ever said, oh, gosh, if you would have used fresh, it would have tasted better. Of course, some olive oil. Salt and pepper. That's the pepper. A little pinch of salt. A little more. Okay. And then this is organic Italian seasoning. And I just put a little bit of that in there. This is minced onions. You can use fresh onions, but again, no one knows the difference. Okay, a little bit of red chili pepper, crushed chili pepper. You can do this to your taste if you want them hotter. I just throw a few in there. The last two is oregano. Whoops, that was a fumble. Okay, so oregano and organic basil. I like basil, so I put a little extra in. All right, the next step is to get your hands dirty and get in there and stir it all up. Okay, so that's pretty good. And then I use 2 pounds of ground beef. Pounds of ground beef, 1 pound of ground pork. We're going to throw that in there. Like that. Whoops, it helps to take this paper off of there, okay. And then you just kind of go at it. This is the fun part. You just mix it all up. And so camera person, we could pause it here. Okay, we're getting closer. So we've put our hands in it and scrambled it all together. So that's sort of what it looks like. Keep the olive oil handy, because you're going to want to put a little olive oil on your hand. Obviously wash your hands, which of course I did. And then we're going to start making the meatballs. You could make them as big or as small as you want. I like them kind of medium sized, which is about like that. It's actually a little bit larger than maybe it should be, but you just roll them up and I put them in a paper plate, as you can see. So we'll turn off the film and I'll finish doing all this, and then I'll show you how to cook them, which is really one of the most important parts. All right, be right back. Okay, here we go. The meatballs are all made, as you can see. And now for the fun part, we're going to actually cook them. And this is not how Grandma used to do it, but I learned this on a YouTube video. So Rao's is by far the best jarred sauce that I've ever had. Rao had the pleasure of meeting me in New York City one day, which was outstanding for both him and me. You can find this stuff at Costco. It's a little spendy if you get it in a grocery store. So here's what you do. You pour a thin layer of it in the pan. Okay, that's about it, because we're going to need at least 2 loads in order to make this work. This is a cast iron skillet, but you can use just about any kind of skillet. It doesn't really matter. Then you put the water in, and you just make the water go about 1 inch or so high, like that. Never be too far away from olive oil. A little bit of olive oil in there. And then I'm going to place the meatballs one by one into this sauce. And sometimes I kind of re-round them again. Once I get them all in there, then we're going to turn this thing on and just bring it to a simmer. So we can have the camera pause and we'll show you what it looks like when it's simmering. Okay, you can see that we've got it going to a simmer now, and it takes about 10 minutes, and then I very carefully roll them over and do the other side. So we'll come back in about 10 minutes. I'll show you how you can tell that when they're getting done. You can actually see the middle of the meatball start to turn brown, which means it's getting cooked. You don't have to worry so much about cooking them all the way through, because they will cook more when you boil them in the sauce. But because there's pork in there, you want to make sure that they're fully cooked at some point before you eat them. Okay, coming back at you shortly. Okay, so they're almost ready to be turned. One very important thing that I didn't mention last time is I've never touched them. It's kind of tempting to want to touch them and roll them and do things, but as one of my Italian friends once said, let the food cook. I think that's important, because if you just put them in there the way I have, and I haven't touched them until I'm going to turn them over, and I'm going to turn them with a spoon, they actually brown on the other side, on the bottom, because they're resting against the bottom of the pan. So hopefully when I turn them, I'll do it at the right time and they'll be slightly brown on the bottom. Okay, welcome back. You can see that I've turned them over and that they are brown on the bottom, which means that I turned them over at precisely the right time. The way you know is that they start to turn brown or gray up towards the top. And it's also very important to notice that I have the water covers about 3/4 of the meatball. Okay, so that's the amount of water that you want to put in. But there you have it. These are going to be done in about 10 minutes, and then I'll show you what to do next. Okay, and here's the meatballs completely cooked. The second batch is in the pan. All you have to do next is let these cool to room temperature, and then I freeze them in just a plastic bag. And then you take them out as needed, put them in the sauce, let the sauce bubble away, and there you have it. Homemade Italian meatballs, not too bad for an Irishman. And which reminds me, it's almost happy hour here in Sandpoint, Idaho. All right, guys, have a good rest of the day. Thanks.